Alright, hey guys, and welcome back to another video. So I've picked out a giant stack of games from my PlayStation 1 collection, and I just wanted to share some of my recommendations of some of my favorite sort of rare, obscure, hidden gems that I've enjoyed over the years. It's a nice mixture. Some of the games are flat out pretty bad, but interesting in some unique way. Some of them are not too expensive, some of them are a little hard to get, so they're not going to be quite as cheap, but I think I picked out a good mixture for you guys here, and we are going to be doing this old school style. Meaning we're going to be holding up the game case and just talking, and hopefully my description of these games will help you guys decide whether or not you want to jot them down for your wish list or not. It's just going to let me get these style of videos out to you guys on a faster, more consistent basis, and if you do enjoy it, be sure to leave a like and a comment. I've been out of the YouTube game for a little bit here, so anything to help me work back into the crazy YouTube algorithm and get put in people's recommendation boxes again would be really appreciated. So what do you say we start with one of my personal favorite PS1 games over the years? I've really grown to love Irritating Stick. So this is a game that is, it's essentially an arcade game. It's based off of a Japanese television show, and there's a version of this on the N64 that never came to the United States as well, but we did get a version in the US here on the PlayStation 1. And the premise is really simple. You're just guiding a stick through an obstacle course, and it's very tedious and difficult, but oh so addicting, where it's sort of like playing the board game Operation, where you're like trying to navigate through the patient's body and like not hit the sides because it'll zap you, and that's what happens in this. So really fun obstacle course game. It can technically be beaten in under like 20 minutes, but trust me, your first time through this is going to be really difficult. It's going to be really aggravating, but once the learning curve clicks, you're going to fall in love with this. I actually did a speed run of this. I have the world record from when I was doing speedruns of this. I've done this on Games Done Quick. I'll actually put a video, a link to that video in the description if you want to check that out. It's up on my VOD channel as well. I got some gameplay of this, but highly recommend Irritating Stick. It's not a game that I feel is recommended enough by people these days. So here is a somewhat unknown fighting game, and this is another super sort of like janky, weird game, Destrega. I recently played this one within the past 2 years or so, and had a listen, I love bad games if they make me laugh, and this game made me laugh because it's essentially a fighting game that places a huge emphasis on the story. There are really long, unskippable cutscenes that are fully voice acted with that terrible voice acting that you would sometimes expect from this era. So if you're into terrible voice acting and just having a good laugh at your games, definitely check out Destrega. It's sort of like an Air Guys, almost like Power Stone-esque, like 3D arena battle style fighting game. So you can definitely kind of like button mash your way through this. It's nothing too complicated. So if you're not into like Tekkens and Street Fighters, don't worry, you can jump into this one just fine. Next, I got a platformer for you guys, and this is a very, very early PlayStation 1 platformer. This is Floating Runner, and this is one of the earliest 3D platformers on the console. It's released in 1996, same year as Bubsy 3D. Floating Runner, Bubsy 3D, and Jumping Flash are really like the earliest 3D platformers that first started coming out, and this is when they were still trying to figure out how to handle camera and general movement in the 3D platformer genre, which is just starting to come about. And of course Mario 64 would teach everybody the proper way to handle that. It's not an amazing game. It does have a lot of problems. It can be really aggravating and very difficult. But if you're a 3D platformer fan and you want to kind of get a glimpse at the roots of where the genre sort of started originally, this is one definitely worth checking out. Got another pretty untalked about fighting game for you guys, and this one I played in October last year, the year before that. Killing Zone. Now this is a terrible fighting game. Okay, it's bad, but once again, it's a game that you can have some really good laughs with. It's a monster themed fighting game, so you're playing as like Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, Minotaurs, Medusa. And the mode that I thought was kind of fun and weird, and you might have some fun if you like have some friends over, or maybe you get some like friendly bets going or something. I'm just theorizing here what you can do with this game. There's a mode that the monsters will fight by themselves, so you watch them fight. It's like your AI versus the enemy's AI, but as your monsters fight, they learn and level up their techniques and level up their stats based on what they do. So it's sort of like a fun, for those of you that ever played the Smash Brothers games and you put it on like the AI to fight one another, think of it like that, where you can do that, but actually have a game mode built around it with a tournament bracket and everything. I think you'll get a kick out of Killing Zone. A little bit more of an uncommon game that you typically don't see. So I've really shown you guys some of the more, not too pricey games, but unfortunately this one is a bit pricey. But I'd say if you're into terrible FMV games and just like some of the more super rare and obscure games in the PS1 library, you couldn't go wrong with Fox Hunt. I played this for the first time, I think it was a year or two ago. This one's a bit more recent, and oh man, did I have a good laugh with Fox Hunt. I went into this kind of blind. I wasn't sure what to expect from the story. All you gotta know is it's live action cutscenes. It's multiple discs. It's got terrible acting, but trust me, I mean, if you can afford it, this game is not cheap. It's from Capcom, by the way. I would encourage you not to watch any gameplay on this, because if you watch gameplay or reviews, it's going to spoil the game for you. If you can afford it or download it, do whatever you got to do to play this game. Do it completely without knowledge of the game, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun. There's a hint that I can give you at the start of the game that may hurt or ruin your experience potentially, but I'll just say pay very close attention at the start of this game. Take everything it tells you seriously, because I was not able to finish this game my first time through. That's all I'm going to say, but I loved every second of it. This is an excellent game that I streamed on my Twitch channel, and we had a lot of fun with Fox Hunt. I'll definitely be playing this again in the future to hopefully try and beat it with a true ending. Okay, this is a very... I was not expecting what I got out of this game, essentially. I'll say that. I wasn't sure what to expect, and that's Power Shovel. Now, this is a game that you can play with a special controller if you so desired, but I did just play this with a normal controller with the dual analog sticks. And this was... I thought this was just going to be like a simulator of playing as, a power shovel, essentially. But it's so much more than that. It's got a really wacky Japanese twist to it. It's a bunch of time minigames. Think of it like WarioWare, but in a construction zone. And it was super fun, very challenging, very wacky. This is another one where if it sounds interesting to you, I would encourage you to just play it. Don't spoil it for yourself, because you might ruin some of the more... out there concepts that are in this game. And it's a bit harder to find this one these days, so keep an eye out for it. Got another platformer for you guys. And this is Kingsley's Adventure. This is rare in two ways. It's rare in that it's a bit hard to find, but it's also rare in that it reminds me very heavily of a rare platformer, meaning like a Banjo-Kazooie style platformer. And really, there's only a couple of PS1 games that remind me of that, and that's like 40 Winks and this game. But this game goes the full mile, where when you talk to characters, the cute little animal characters, they talk like they're talking from Banjo-Kazooie. It's got, a nice little hub world where you can wander around and talk to characters in villages. So it's not just like a straight up A to B, okay, go to the start of this level and the end of this level. It's got a nice little sort of like complete package of what you would kind of expect from an N64 era platformer. And I'm going to be honest, we don't get too many N64 style platformers on the PS1. A lot of them are a bit more rudimentary, like what you would kind of expect from a game with no fluff, just like Klonoa, start to finish, no hub worlds, just kind of like, A to B. This game has got a bit more to it. It's got great graphics. It's almost got like a cel-shaded kind of look to it without being cel-shaded. And it's just one of the better 3D platformers in the library, if you can check that one out. This one here, it's kind of hard to categorize it, but if you know Art Dink's games, you kind of know what to expect. And that's Tale of the Sun. It actually has the original price sticker on there of what I paid in GameStop for this game, $2.99, and I probably got it during a buy two get one free sale. This is definitely a hard one to find. It's not super expensive because it's just not a game for everybody. But if you're into kind of like life sim games or just sim games in general, or open world adventure games, this is sort of cutting edge for the time. I'd almost say almost ahead of its time, in that this game it just drops you in and doesn't tell you anything about what to do. You're just a caveman in a prehistoric area. You just get dropped into the game and they're like, good luck, figure it out. You start running into woolly mammoths and other creatures, and you have to kind of like find resources and make do with what you find and just kind of explore. If you're into games that don't tell you a lot and you're just set out to explore, you should really check out Tale of the Sun. I was very surprised by this. It's quite challenging. I definitely didn't beat it my first time through, but it has a fan base. If you're into the weird and obscure, check this one out. Now, this one here I did play quite a few years ago, so my memory is a little shaky on it. But what I do recall about Soul of the Samurai, a Konami action-adventure game, is that I was kind of taken aback by how good the presentation in this game was. I wasn't expecting a game so focused on story and character development and cutscenes, and just, it felt like I was playing a movie at times, because if you look at the back of the box of this, it almost makes it look like a one-on-one fighting game with the health bars on top and everything, but those fighting scenarios are contained within a much larger adventure game where there's character development. They actually let you choose between two different characters to see two different sides of the story. So if you're into sort of like samurai lore driven adventure games, you definitely want to check this out. And also if you're just a fan of fighting games, even though it's not just a straight up fighting game, it's a bit more of a blend between beat 'em up and fighting, definitely check out Soul of the Samurai. I was very surprised by this one. Got a 2D platformer for you. You may be aware of this one now. I think word is getting around that this game is actually really good, but I do want to keep letting people know about it, and that is Disney's Hercules. Now, this game is special in that it's one of the very few PlayStation 1 games that uses the sort of 2D sprite work on top of 3D backgrounds, akin to sort of like Klonoa, Tomba, Strider 2. In that sense, this is one of the very few that uses that graphic style, which is one of my personal favorites. And a lot of people probably write this off because they're like, oh, it's just a cheap Disney license game, and you can't blame them. There are a lot of good Disney games, but there are also a lot of bad ones. And this is a fantastic 2.5D platformer. It's challenging, it's got absolutely beautiful graphics. It does a lot of perspective shifts here and there where it's not just complete side scrolling. Sometimes you'll be doing like running behind the back. Great animation, great colors, just an overall solid platformer. I've never even seen the movie Hercules, and I still got a lot of fun out of that one. Alright, got another racing game for you guys. This is a childhood favorite of mine, and that's Running Wild. I actually did a review of this game, or some kind of video for this many years ago on my YouTube channel. And this is just, it's a challenging game. I actually went back to this a couple years ago and was kind of blown away by how hard this game is on the normal and harder difficulties. It's an on-foot racer, which makes it really unique. It's not one of the only on-foot racers out there. There's actually a couple of them on the PlayStation 1. One of which is exclusive to, or a couple of which are exclusive to Japan. Which, by the way, for those of you that have made it this far in the video, if you are enjoying it, be sure to leave a like and a comment to let me know, because if these videos get enough traction, I've got a giant import PS1 collection. I mean huge, and I've played a lot of games that can be played without knowing any English, and I can do a ton of recommendations for that. So if you guys are interested, let me know. If these videos, if they're, essentially, if you guys are watching, all right, I will keep making these, and I'll do some for my PS1 import collection because I'm very knowledgeable on good games that are exclusive to Japan for the PlayStation 1. So let me know. But anyway, yeah, check this out. It's definitely not an amazing game looking back at it, but if you're into, once again, just a different style of racing game, being on foot, being something that not a lot of people have played before with weird anthropomorphic animal characters, check it out. It's not too expensive either. This one's getting a little pricey. I think people are catching on to just how wacky and insane Incredible Crisis is. And this is a game that I went into once again without too much knowledge. I knew it was a minigame compilation, Japanese developed, so I knew it was going to be wacky and insane, but I wasn't expecting just how crazy this game is. Once again, it's a game that I encourage you, if you're into WarioWare style games, to just play it. Don't spoil it. Don't watch videos. Don't watch reviews. Just trust yourself. Trust me and go for it. The game is just filled with so many funny scenarios. It's like WarioWare, like I said, but just imagine if the WarioWare sequences were in a 3D engine and a bit more complex and expanded upon than just like quick little like 10-second mini games. Check it out. It's definitely a cult classic. Now this one here you probably see in bargain bins and on eBay quite a lot, and that's Akuji the Heartless. Now this game here is interesting in that it kind of ran out of budget from what I understand towards the end of the game. So the beginning of the game is actually this really epic crystal dynamic Eidos sort of like Tomb Raider-esque action adventure game with amazing graphics, amazing, like I just remember the first level in this game having like, it had rain and thunder effects and the lighting just looks so good. It looked amazing, sounded amazing. If I remember right, there's even voice acting in this. Just the whole package was awesome. I'm like, wow, how have I not played this game yet? But then you get about halfway through the game, and then the game just completely changes in the way that it's presented. The levels don't look quite as good. It just kind of looks like a third-rate just action game, but it's a really crazy tonal shift that if you're like a game developer yourself playing this just to see like where this came right out of budget, like if you're an indie dev or something, it's like, man, you could play this and just be like, man, I can feel that, boy, you know, with those budgets to make games these days and everything. So yeah, a pretty good game. Just I thought it was always kind of curious about how the game just completely changes midway through. All right, so this one here is a very hard game, one of the better looking games in the library. Very, very challenging, but that is Reboot. Now, I never really grew up watching Reboot, so I don't have any nostalgia for this show. And yes, believe it or not a lot of people know there is a Reboot game. So when I streamed this originally, people were very surprised because not a lot of people knew about this game. But this is a 3D action game. You play on a hoverboard. So think of it like if Tony Hawk had an action park, but it was futuristic in the Reboot universe, but they built the whole game around it with platforming and like levels and just craziness and combat and everything. So yeah, the controls can be really difficult, but once you kind of get them down and you're able to navigate the levels accordingly, and trust me, you're going to need patience for this game. It's going to take you probably at least an hour before you really come to grips with the controls of this game. But it's incredibly rewarding, and hopefully you're able to get past the incredible difficulty curve and spike in this game. It's kind of worth it. Alright, speaking of one of those on-foot racers, I picked out one of them here, and that is Bomberman Fantasy Race. It's sort of under-talked about, not really recognized too much anymore these days. I guess you can call it kart racer, but you're not racing on karts, you're racing on like those bunny things that I totally don't remember what they call them from the Bomberman series. And yeah, I checked this out for the first time a couple of years ago and had a lot of fun with it. If you're a fan of games like Chocobo Racing, I think you'll enjoy this, but there's also a lot to this that kind of makes it stand out in the way that the game controls, because it's essentially like a kart racer but a platformer at the same time, because the rabbit things that you race in also can jump and bound off of walls and everything. There's a very high learning curve to this game. But one thing that you should know, the Japanese version is worth considering over the US version, because the US version requires a lot more grinding in order to progress through the game. The Japanese version is a bit more lenient, actually, with that sort of progression through the main story mode in the game. And it's also a lot cheaper because, well, if you haven't noticed, this is published by Atlas, so that automatically makes the game a bit harder to get, as I'm sure you know. Alright, hope you guys like racing games. I do. I got another one for you. This one is not amazing, but I wanted to recommend it because I feel like this game is super under the radar, and that is N-Gen Racing. This is a flight racing game, and that's kind of why it stood out to me, is because you race in planes rather than in cars or karts. I just remember the game having really over-the-top sort of like PS1 era techno dance music, which I always appreciate. I really miss the era when that was the style of music we got in our racing games, so I'm kind of nostalgic for that. The game itself isn't that great. Like I said, it's a little hard to control at times, and the levels, I think the biggest downside with this is the levels don't really feel distinct from one another, so every level kind of feels the same from one to the next. But if you're able to overlook that and look for something a bit different, this one's worth checking out. Alright, I'm gonna give you guys one last racing game, but this is one that's like one of those so bad it's good cases, and that's Bug Riders. This is a game that the first time I played it, I actually deemed it as one of the worst games I had ever played, and maybe probably the worst PS1 game I'd played. But then I revisited it a couple years later, and I kind of fell in love with it. The original reason why I hated it is because it's almost like it's on rails. You're flying on these giant insects, and you like whip them to get them to go faster, like a horse race or something. You know, you whip the horses or whatever, and they run faster, like a jockey style. But it's just so weird. Like, no, I've never played another racing game quite like this. So despite the terrible controls, because here's the biggest issue with this game, and when I found this out, I definitely appreciated it a little bit less. But if you just sit there and mash the button without even steering, you just mash the like go faster button, the game will automate itself through the track. So you can essentially sit there asleep just mashing X, and you will finish the races. You will not crash into walls and stop. The game will kind of auto-progress you. So I lost a bit of respect for it with that, but in terms of the concept itself and just how just strange it is, I had to give it a recommendation. One of those bad games in my recommendations, but if you're in the bad games that are like just kind of an interesting concept, you might want to check it out. And speaking of bad games, this is going to be my final recommendation for you guys. This is definitely a game only for bad game lovers. I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with this, probably due to YouTube videos over the years highlighting how bad this game is. And that is The Crow City of Angels. Now, I luckily did buy this game before it got kind of really hard and expensive to get, and I did stream this, and oh man, I mean, it's a good laugh. The game is so terrible that you can't help but laugh at it. There's a lot of cheat codes that make it even weirder with like big head mode, like tall stick character mode. It's really bad, but it's also extremely difficult. This game is insanely hard to progress through. Beating bosses in this is like a life achievement, but I have I don't have too much familiarity with The Crow itself, but it's a very light survival horror type game. It's like 25% survival horror and 75% like just terribleness. So if you're a fan of the survival horror genre and you want to see like what the bottom of the barrel looks like, and I'd recommend playing this with like some friends or something so you can all endure the pain together, check out The Crow. But it's unfortunately it's going to be a bit hard for you to track down. So there you guys go. There's just some random PlayStation 1 recommendations for you. Once again, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, really appreciate it. Let me know down below what you guys want me to cover next. I mean, I can do more US PS1 stuff, but I can also do PlayStation 2. I can do import PS1, import PS2 stuff. I can do other consoles, but I do want to really focus on PlayStation stuff because that's kind of my forte. I have played so many PlayStation games over the years lately, and I have so many recommendations for you guys. So once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And also come pop by my stream. You might catch me streaming some games that might appear in these videos in the future. I'll have links for all that in the description.